Okay, today we're going to review chapter 10. So far we've learned how to graph a line using three ways. First method we learned was called slope intercept form. And it was y equals to mx plus b, where the m is your slope and b is your, which intercept is it? Is it x or y? This is the y-intercept. You guys remember that? So let's do an example. Knowing this, we could graph a line really easily. So first way we learned was slope intercept form. So let's do an example. What if I have 2x plus 3y equals to negative 6? Now, a lot of times, your problems will not be in slope intercept form to start with. They will give you a standard form, the one that looks like this. So what you have to do then is, anybody? You have to solve for y. That's correct. So to do that, so that we could have y by itself. So subtract 2x from both sides. When I do that, I get 3y equals 2. Well, we can't, these are not like terms, so we need to rewrite them as negative 2x minus 6. We can't subtract them because they're not the same like terms, okay? So then what we do then is, still we do not have y by itself, so we divide by 3. The whole right side by 3, so we get y equals to negative 2x over 3 minus 6 over 3. So you get y equals to, see, you gotta divide 3 to each of those terms. So you get negative 2 over 3x minus 6 over 3, which is negative 2. Now notice I have addition in the middle for this form, so is there a way to write this as an addition? The answer is yes. We can write this as y equals to negative 2 over 3x plus negative 2. Now let's try to graph this. Now we know that this negative 2/3 is your slope and negative 2 is your y-intercept. Remember, we call this m for slope, b for y-intercept. So let's graph this line. So here's my graph paper. Make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so we will start with, remember, we cannot start with slope because there are too many lines with this slope. So we have to have a starting point, which is your b. So I'm going to start at negative 2. And I know that my slope is negative 2/3. The slope negative 2/3 means negative 2 over positive 3. So I go down 2. Remember, this is rise above run. So if rise is negative, you have to go down 3 from your starting point, which is your y-intercept. Go down 2, and to the positive 3 means you go to the right 3. So you end up here. So then all you have to do is connect these 2 points. And put the arrows here because it goes on forever. There's your equation. So that was our first method of graphing the line. Now the second method of graphing the line, let's graph the same exact line as before. Second way, it was, do you guys remember, was using tables of values. This is not the fastest way, but this kind of, we do this to kind of check and see if we got the right graph, okay, if we're not so sure. So if you guys remember how to do the tables of value, remember we're going to use the same exact equation that we had before, which was 2x plus 3y equals to negative 6. And just like before, our first step is to solve for y, okay? Because we want, when we're using tables of value, we want to solve for y. And you guys remember what we got before? So it was y is equal to, when we don't have to do the same exact thing again, so we could go back and see what it was. It was y is equal to negative 2/3 x plus negative 2. So you do the same exact thing. Step 1, solve for y, just like the first method, slope intercept form. So after we do this, we make a table. So here we put again some x, and then we know what now y is. And then we get the order pair x comma y. And because we could plug in any x's we want, the easiest x we said was to plug in was 0. So we get y equals to -2/3 times 0 plus -2. And of course this becomes y equals to -2. The order pair is 0, -2. Now, because we could plug in any x's we want, the next x we're going to plug in, a lot of people may say, oh, let's plug in 1, but because we have a fraction and denominator is 3, it's best to multiply, best to plug in x that is multiples of 3. So I'm going to plug in 3 here instead of 1 or 2, because look what happens when I do that. I get y equals to -2/3 times 3 plus -2. Now 3 is really 3 over 1, and notice the 3's will cancel out. Did you see that? So you get y equals to -2 plus -2, which is of course y is equal to -4. Not positive 4, but -4, right? Y equals to -4. So the order pair that we get for 3, when x is 3, the y is -4. And let's do just one more. Let's plug in. Do you think we should plug in 5 or 6 or 4? 4. We got 3. 4 would not be good because you get fractions. And 5, you still get fractions. But if I plug in 6, which is multiples of 3, we get y is equal to -2/3 times 6 plus -2, which is y is equal to -2/3 times 6 over 1 plus -2. Notice 3 goes into 6 twice, 3 goes into 3 once, so you get negative, what's -2 times 2? You get -4 plus -2, which is -6. So we get 6 comma -6. And we could verify this gives us the same exact graph as we had before. Look, we got 0, -2, 3, -4, 6, -6. And if you go back to our graph, there is 0, -2. What is this one? 3, -4. And look, when x equals to 6, I know that I didn't draw it so carefully here. You get 6, -6. That's that line. Does that make sense? So notice we have all these 3 points. It verifies that we did this graph correctly. So this is yet another way of graphing the line. Last method we learned was using the method 3 was using slope. No, we used intercepts. So using intercepts. And do you guys remember which intercepts we used? We used the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And remember what these were, x-intercept and y-intercept? X-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis. Y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So let's do exactly the same problem again. Let's see if we get the same graph. Now, one nice thing about using the intercepts is we don't have to solve for y. All you have to remember that is, if you want to get x-intercept, we know that the line, when the line crosses the x-axis, it has to have the y coordinate as 0 and some number a, comma 0 is the x-intercept. And if you have a y-intercept, since the number has to be on the y-axis, it has to be, because you can't go left or right if you want to be on the y-axis from the origin, you have to have x0 and then you get some number for b, y. So all you have to do is plug in x for a, y for 0. And solve for a to get the x-intercept. So here's what I mean by this. Look at your equation. Plug in a for x, so you get 2 times a plus 3 times 0 equals to -6. And if you solve for a, that gives you the x-intercept. Watch this. We get 2a plus 0 equals to -6. So you get 2a is equal to -6. So a is equal to -3. Divide both sides by 2. So there it is. We have the x-intercept at -3, which means the order pair is -3, 0. And look at our y-intercept. We get 2 times 0 this time plus, because your x is 0, your y is b, plus 3 times b equals to -6. So we get 2 times 0 is 0. You get 3b equals to -6. Then you get 3b equals to -6. Divide both sides by 3. b equals to -2. And notice, what is the order pair then? Since the y-intercept has to have the x-coordinate as 0, that's the only way for the point to be on the y-axis. You get 0, comma, -2. And so you get, notice, let's go back to our graph. Our x-intercept was -3. Our y-intercept was -2. And let's see if that's true. Let's go back. And it should give us the same exact graph as before. See, here's my y-intercept at -2. That's your A, right? And what was our B? See, our B was -3. So it gives us the same exact graph. So there are 3 ways of graphing these linear equations that gives you a line, okay? And last thing we learned was finding a slope of a line. So for example, if I gave you some points so find the slope of a line given 2 points, like -2, 3, and how about 3, comma, -5, okay? So if we're given these 2 points, and these are 2 points of a line, how do we find the slope? We graph them and stuff, and we could figure out the slope, but that would not be always the best way. Remember slope was rise over run. And do you guys remember the formula for the slope? It was, remember, y sub 1 minus y sub 2 over x sub 1 minus x sub 2. Remember, because it was rise, all the y coordinates gives you the y. The difference of the y coordinates gives you the rise. Difference of the x coordinates gives you the run. So this is going to be something minus something over something minus something. And I told you you should label these. What do we call this one? This is x sub 1, y sub 1. 1 meaning it's from that first point. This is then x coordinate of the second point, y coordinate of the second point. So when I plug in here, y1 is 3, and y sub 2 is, now notice this is -5, so you got it right, -5. And your x sub 1 is -2, x sub 2 is 3. So then all we have to do is subtract the numerator. You get 3 minus -5, which is the same as 3 plus 5, over -2 minus 3 is the same as -2 plus, remember, -3, right? Add the opposite when you're subtracting. So you get 8 over -5, which is the same as -8 over 5, which is your slope of that line. Of course, if you could simplify this fraction, you should always simplify. Okay, that's all we've learned in chapter 9. Okay, okay, chapter 10 was it? Okay, yeah. Well, which chapter do we learn? Chapter 10. This is all you need to know for chapter 10 so far. Okay.